They say that living in fear is dying while still breathing, but what does that truly mean? Today, you're going to discover the answer. This is the story of a small rabbit whose fears wouldn't let him live. Until one day, death itself and some wise friends taught him the true value of existence. Once upon a time, in a vast meadow surrounded by rolling hills and wildflowers that stretched as far as the eye could see, there lived a small rabbit. Though he was young, barely 3 years old with his whole life ahead of him, he carried a weight in his heart that made every step feel heavy: the fear of death. He knew that rabbits didn't live many years, that his time in this world would be brief, and that knowledge haunted him like a shadow he couldn't outrun. Each morning, while the other rabbits hopped joyfully through the tall grass, chasing each other and basking in the warmth of the rising sun, he would hide in his burrow, thinking with overwhelming anxiety, "What if today is the day everything ends? What if death finds me and takes away everything I have?" This thought accompanied him always, a constant companion that whispered doubts in his ear wherever he went. It was there in his mornings when he watched the sun break over the horizon, and instead of marveling at its beauty, he counted how many more sunrises he might have left. It followed him through his nights when silence wrapped around him and fear whispered that perhaps tomorrow he wouldn't open his eyes again. Even in simple moments, when his family laughed together, when the breeze played through the meadow flowers, when life offered him glimpses of beauty, the rabbit couldn't enjoy them because his mind was chained to the terror that everything would end too quickly. The small rabbit had a family who loved him deeply: his wife Sarah and their 2 young kits, Emily and James. His friends invited him to play, to laugh, to share happy moments, but he could never truly participate. He was there physically, present in body, but his mind was a prisoner of tomorrow. Each giggle from his children sounded distant to him, like an echo that couldn't quite reach his heart. He watched Sarah prepare their meals with love, tell bedtime stories to the little ones, extend her paw to accompany him on evening walks, and yet he remained absent, as if an invisible barrier separated him from them all. Fear made him a slave to an uncertain future, and while he waited for the day of his departure, without realizing it, he was letting the most valuable moments of his present die. When Sarah would look at him with worried eyes and say tenderly, "My dear, please stop thinking so much about the day you'll leave us. You're missing the best moments we have together," he would respond with a tired sigh and say, "What's the point of laughing if everything ends? What's the point of memories if one day death will erase them all?" And so, between dark thoughts and endless worrying, the small rabbit slowly distanced himself from the joy of his family and from life itself. While everyone else enjoyed the present, he remained trapped in fear of the end. His home, which should have been a place of laughter and peace, filled with silences and uncertainties. One night, unable to sleep despite his exhaustion, the rabbit left his burrow. The meadow lay calm under a full moon that seemed to watch him from above, its silver light painting everything in shades of blue and gray. The small rabbit looked up at the star-filled sky, and with his heart full of anguish, he raised his voice in a whisper that trembled with emotion. "God, why did you make the lives of living beings so short? Why do you give us just a few years and then take us back? What's the point of running, working, loving, and dreaming if in the end everything finishes as if it never existed?" The wind blew softly through the wildflowers, as if trying to give him an answer, but it only left more emptiness. In his heart, the rabbit continued, his eyes growing moist with unshed tears. "If life is just an instant, what sense does it make to rejoice? Why give me a family if one day I'll have to say goodbye to them? Why give me friends if someday they won't be here anymore? It's as if life is a trap, a poisoned gift that reminds me every second that I'm going to lose everything." The rabbit remained there for a long time, contemplating the heavens, searching for a voice that would give him clarity. But he heard nothing except the echo of his own fears. And the more he asked, the more he tried to understand, the deeper he fell into confusion. His heart tightened in his chest, and he felt that while others slept peacefully, he carried a shadow too heavy for his small being to bear. The next day, the rabbit woke with tired eyes. He had barely slept, For the entire night passed with him thinking about the same thing. Tomorrow, the end, death. Sarah, who watched him with tenderness and concern, approached gently and said, "You spent another night awake, didn't you?" The rabbit lowered his gaze and murmured softly, "I can't help it. Every time I close my eyes, I think that maybe I won't open them again. It torments me to think that everything we have will disappear in the blink of an eye." Sarah sighed, trying to contain her sadness, and responded with sweetness, "My love, while you worry so much about tomorrow, you're losing today. The children want to play with you. Your friends miss you. I need your company, but your heart is always in a future that hasn't arrived yet." The rabbit, with a gesture of bitterness, replied, "And what's the point? Why enjoy what I have if one day I'll have to leave it all behind? I prefer not to get attached, prefer not to feel joy, because I know that sooner or later everything ends." She took his small paws firmly, looked into his eyes, and said with a deep voice, "But my love, precisely because everything ends, it's worth living. Don't you understand? The memories we build today are the only thing that makes us truly immortal. If you run from love and joy out of fear, in the end you'll be dying every day without realizing it." The rabbit fell silent. His wife's words pierced his heart like a truth he didn't want to accept. However, his mind, still imprisoned by fear, whispered to him that none of this was enough to overcome the shadow that pursued him. He stood up without saying much more, his gaze lost and his heart restless. He wanted to understand what she was telling him, but fear continued to weigh more than any advice. That day, he decided to leave early to gather wild carrots and bring food home. He walked through the forest trails with his satchel on his back, still trapped in his dark thoughts. As he moved forward, he heard laughter and singing. He stopped for a moment and observed. Beside the path, a group of squirrels played, jumping from branch to branch, tossing acorns and chasing each other with delight. Further ahead, he saw some robins flying together, celebrating the dawn with their song. Even a family of deer rested peacefully, sharing tender shoots and affection in the shade of an oak tree. The rabbit watched them in silence, with a lump in his throat. He wondered how everyone could enjoy life with such lightness, as if death didn't exist lurking nearby. Don't they think about the end? Do they ignore that one day everything finishes? He said to himself, feeling strange, like a foreigner amid the joy of others. He continued walking, gathering some wild carrots and clover, but his mind couldn't move away from that scene. Inside him, a voice urged him to wonder if perhaps he was the only one living as a slave to a fear that others had learned to release. But on that same day, fate showed him an image that shook him even more deeply. As he turned onto a narrow trail in the forest, the rabbit froze in place. Just a few yards away from him, a pack of coyotes was tearing apart the carcass of a deer. Their teeth flashed in the dappled sunlight, their snarls filled the silence, and bones cracked under their powerful jaws. The rabbit couldn't look away. That deer, which had once been a symbol of grace and strength, now lay lifeless, reduced to a pile of flesh without breath. Its eyes, which had once been alert and bright, were now empty. Its proud bearing had been silenced forever. The small rabbit felt a chill run through his body and thought with anguish, if even the deer so powerful and majestic met this end, what can I expect? I, who am so fragile and small. Does death make us all equal, no matter how strong we were in life? He brought his paws to his chest, trying to calm the frantic beating of his heart. Maybe life is just this, a brief instant that ends in nothing. What's the point of running, loving, dreaming, if one day will just be a memory, and then not even that? Tears began to well up as he watched the coyotes brutally strip the last remains from the deer. The scene became unbearable, and yet his eyes couldn't turn away. It was as if death itself was staring at him, reminding him that his turn would also come. With a choked voice, he murmured, "God, why does life end this way? If even the most graceful creature of the forest ended in silence, what sense does it make to try? Why give me a heart that dreams if sooner or later it will be torn from my chest?" The wind blew strong, as if trying to erase his thoughts, but instead of calming him, it sank him even deeper into the storm of his own mind. Fear wrapped around him with more force than ever before. That night, after a long day of work gathering carrots, the rabbit returned exhausted to his burrow. Sarah and the children slept peacefully, but once again, he couldn't find rest. The weight of what he had seen during the day, the joyful life of some, the brutal death of the deer, made him feel trapped between two worlds he didn't understand. He left quietly and sat on a large rock under the starry sky. The murmur of crickets accompanied his thoughts as the small rabbit lifted his gaze upward and murmured, "God, tell me what life is. Why does it last so little? Why does it let us dream, laugh, and love if in the end death takes everything away? Is it perhaps a cruel game, a meaningless breath? I look at my children sleeping and I tremble with fear, thinking that one day I won't be here to protect them. Is this the destiny you give us, to be born, to work, to fear, and to wait for you to take our breath away? Tell me, God, is all of this worth it if everything dissolves like dust in the wind? Why plant love if death comes to harvest it? Why fight if we always lose against time?" Tears wet his whiskers when suddenly a cold breeze swept through the meadow. The air changed, and a dark silhouette appeared before him, a majestic figure with a cloak that seemed made of shadows and a strange glow that surrounded it. The rabbit jumped back, his heart racing. "What are you?" he asked, trembling. The figure looked at him with serene eyes and answered with a deep voice, "I am what you fear most. I am the angel of death." The rabbit froze, his small body trembling from head to toe. He believed his last day had arrived. "No!" he cried desperately. "Is this my end? Have you come to take me? Please, I'm not ready. My family needs me. My children are still so small." Death, instead of taking his life, leaned down slightly toward him and with an unexpectedly calm tone responded, "Be at peace, small rabbit. Tonight I have not come for you." The rabbit looked at him with disbelief. His voice trembled as he asked, "Then why are you here? Why show me your face if it's not my time?" The angel of death remained silent for a few seconds and then said with solemnity, "Because you called me. Your questions, your pain, your fear, all of it reached me. You summoned me with your anguish, and here I am." The rabbit, still trembling, could barely whisper, "If you haven't come to take me, then tell me what sense does this short life have? Why are we born only to die? Why did you give me a heart that dreams if one day you'll extinguish it?" Death observed him in silence, and with a profound voice said, "Don't be mistaken, little one. I have no authority to take your life. Don't you know that every breath, from the greatest to the smallest, stands before the eternal? He is the one who gives and the one who takes. I merely obey. I merely fulfill." The rabbit opened his eyes wide with astonishment as the figure continued. "You complain about how short your existence is, but have you not seen the mayfly that lives only a single day? Have you not noticed the butterfly that barely sees a few sunrises before it's gone? They don't waste their moments. They live, they fly, they fulfill their purpose. And you have more time than they do, but you spend it in fear, in laments, in thinking about a tomorrow that doesn't even belong to you. And look also at the old tortoise. She lives many, many years, but she doesn't torment herself with the idea of the end. She walks slowly, savors each step, each leaf, each ray of sunshine. She lives in peace with the time she's been given, whether it's much or little. Small rabbit, don't you understand that the value of life isn't in the quantity of years, but in how you live them?" The voice became even more solemn, as if resonating in the depths of the rabbit's heart. "The Creator gave you life so that you would live it, not so that you would waste it with anxiety. Each day you wake up is a gift. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to continue fearing the end? Or are you going to learn to truly live?" The rabbit listened with tears in his eyes, trembling. He had never thought that even the smallest beings made better use of their time than he did. The angel of death, after pronouncing those words that struck like fire in the rabbit's heart, began to disappear slowly into the darkness of the night. His figure withdrew with solemn steps, like one returning to fulfill the task given to him since the beginning of time. The rabbit remained alone under the dark sky, with the murmur of crickets and the echo of that voice resonating within him. He returned to his burrow with trembling paws, but that night he couldn't sleep. He closed his eyes and heard again the angel's words. The Creator gave you life so that you would live it, not so that you would waste it with fear. He tossed and turned restlessly on his bed of dry grass. His mind, accustomed to chasing the ghosts of tomorrow, was now caught in a whirlwind of questions bigger than himself. What if death is right? He wondered. What if I've lost my days counting hours instead of living them? What good is my family's love if my heart is always trapped in a future that doesn't exist yet? The rabbit squeezed his eyes shut, trying to find relief, but only found more unrest. That revelation haunted him, that there were beings with less time than he had, and yet they lived intensely. He felt small, ashamed, but also confused. How could he change a habit of fear that had accompanied him his whole life? The silence of the night became a mirror. Each shadow, each gust of wind seemed to remind him that his existence didn't belong to him, that everything was in the hands of the eternal. At dawn, the rabbit left his burrow with his satchel on his back, ready to gather food for his family. He walked slowly, still with the echo of the angel of death's words in his mind. Time doesn't belong to you, but what you do with it does. As he walked, he let himself be enveloped by the murmur of the wind, until, arriving at a crystal-clear stream, he stopped in surprise. There, in the shade of a great willow tree, 3 peculiar beings were gathered. An ancient eagle with silver-tipped feathers and a penetrating gaze, an old fox with wise eyes and a gentle smile, and a hummingbird with iridescent wings that darted cheerfully around them. They were laughing, talking, and seemed to enjoy every second of that gathering as if nothing else existed. The rabbit moved, approached them and said, "Forgive me, but how can you all be so happy? I can't stop thinking about the day when everything will end. I live in fear of tomorrow, and that fear steals today's peace from me." The eagle looked at him with piercing eyes and said in a voice like distant thunder, "Young friend, I've soared above these lands for many seasons, and I've learned that worry about the future is like carrying weight that doesn't exist yet. Each day brings its own concerns. If you live worried about what's coming, you'll never enjoy what you already have. Patience and living in the present moment are treasures greater than any riches." The old fox, with her silver muzzle and kind expression, added, "I've walked many paths and seen many seasons change. I know that everything in life has its time. Being born and dying, laughing and crying, planting and harvesting. The wise don't worry about the inevitable because they understand there's a purpose in each season. Wisdom lies in living prudently today, because tomorrow isn't in your paws." Then the hummingbird, dancing between the wildflowers, said with a soft voice, "I live very briefly, and it's precisely because of that that I appreciate more. What would be the point of having wings if I only used them to fear the end? My secret is simple. Appreciate the beauty that surrounds me, love life while I have it, and don't waste a single instant in regrets. Gratitude transforms each day into a gift, even if it's brief." The rabbit listened with an emotional heart. Each word was like a blow and, at the same time, like a balm. The eagle spoke to him of living in the moment, the fox of purpose and wisdom, and the hummingbird of gratitude. And then he understood that perhaps the problem wasn't the brevity of his life, but the way he had chosen to live it. Hey, if you're connecting with this story, take a moment to share what it means to you in the comments. Sometimes the messages we need most come exactly when we're ready to hear them. And if this is your first time here, I'd love for you to join our community, hit that subscribe button, and let's keep exploring these life lessons together. Now, let's continue with what happens next. The rabbit lowered his gaze with a lump in his throat and confessed to them, "Last night, I saw something I never thought I would see. The angel of death came to me. I trembled, thinking it was my end, but he told me words I cannot forget. He told me that my life isn't in his hands, but in the Creator's, that I waste my days with fear, when there are other beings who live much less than I do, and yet they make the most of every instant. The eagle, with serene eyes, looked at him and said with a deep voice, "The angel didn't lie to you. Each being has its time under the sun, and we're not the ones who decide it. We gain nothing by worrying about extending our days, because time is in hands greater than ours. The life of every living being stands before the Creator. Likewise, little friend, we will all depart one day, and no one will escape death. What is in your paws is the way you choose to live." The fox slowly turned her head and added, "Wisdom consists of understanding that fear of death steals life. The prudent know that each day is a gift, and that worrying about tomorrow is like trying to grasp the wind. Everything has its moment, and what matters isn't how long you live, but how you live." The hummingbird, with a cheerful but firm voice, fluttered near the rabbit and said, "I am living proof of what the angel wanted to teach you. My life is brief, but full of colors and gratitude. If I spent my hours thinking about the end, my wings would never touch the sky. Life withers quickly, but those who live with joy make it eternal in the hearts of those they love." The rabbit felt his small paws trembling, not from fear, but from emotion. It was as if the message from the night before was now being confirmed in the mouths of these wise friends. The eagle, with a tranquil expression, lowered her head toward the small rabbit and said with tenderness, "So, young friend, don't lose any more of your days to fears you cannot control. Go, love your family, embrace your wife, play with your children, and laugh with your friends. Enjoy the simple food, the warmth of your home, and the peace of each sunrise. Don't waste your strength on quarrels, and don't get involved in unnecessary troubles. Life already brings its own. Learn to be grateful for the little or much that you have, because that is true wealth." The eagle remained silent for a few seconds and, with solemnity, concluded, "Remember this. There is no greater good for any living being than to rejoice in their work, enjoy what they have, and appreciate the fruit of their labor, because that is the gift given to them under the sun." The small rabbit remained silent for a few moments, his heart beating strongly. He looked at the eagle, at the fox, and at the hummingbird, and in his eyes reflected something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. With a choked voice, he said to them, Thank you for opening my eyes. I've spent my days hiding, fearing a future that hasn't arrived yet, and the only thing I've achieved is losing the present. Today, I understand that I've wasted valuable moments with my family and my friends, but I don't want to live like this anymore. I want to enjoy, laugh, love, and be thankful for each day given to me. The eagle inclined her head in approval. The hummingbird danced joyfully in the air, and the fox closed her eyes with a serene smile. The rabbit, with his soul renewed, picked up his satchel full of carrots and wild herbs and returned home. That afternoon, instead of locking himself in his burrow, he ran to embrace Sarah and play with his small children, Emily and James. His friends saw him arrive with a new light in his eyes, and for the first time in a very long time, he joined in their laughter and games. From that day forward, the rabbit understood that life isn't measured by its duration, but by the way it's lived. The fear that once imprisoned him transformed into gratitude, and each sunrise stopped being a reason for anguish and became a gift instead. As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the transformation in the rabbit became evident to everyone around him. Sarah noticed how he would now wake before dawn, not out of anxiety, but out of genuine excitement to see the sun paint the meadow in shades of gold and amber. He would gather Emily and James close to him, and together they would watch the morning arrive, and he would tell them stories not about endings, but about beginnings. His voice, which had once been heavy with worry, now carried lightness and warmth. The children, who had grown accustomed to their father's distant presence, now clung to him with joy, climbing on his back and nuzzling against his soft fur. They didn't understand what had changed, but they felt it in every fiber of their being. Their father had finally come home, not just in body, but in spirit. the rabbit began to participate fully in the life of the meadow community. When his friend Robert, a jovial groundhog, invited him to explore the new berry patches on the hillside, he no longer hesitated or made excuses. Instead, he would leap at the opportunity, and together they would spend hours gathering the sweetest berries, laughing at silly jokes, and sharing stories about their families. When Margaret, the wise old mouse who lived near the creek, asked for help storing her winter provisions, the rabbit was there without a second thought, working alongside her and listening to her tales of seasons past. He discovered that in giving his time and presence to others, he received back something far more precious: connection, belonging, and purpose. Sarah watched her husband's transformation with tears of joy in her eyes. One evening, as they sat together outside their burrow, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky, she took his paw in hers and said softly, "My love, you've finally returned to us. I can see it in your eyes. The fear is gone, replaced by something beautiful." "What changed?" The rabbit looked at her, his eyes reflecting the starlight, and he spoke with a voice full of emotion. "I met death, and death taught me about life. I met wise friends who showed me that time isn't our enemy, it's our teacher. Every moment is precious precisely because it won't last forever. The sunset is beautiful because it fades into night. The flower is cherished because it will wilt. Our love is sacred because our time together is finite." He paused, his voice catching slightly. "I've been so afraid of losing you, of losing the children, of losing everything, that I was already living as if I had lost it all. But now I understand. The only way to truly lose is to never fully embrace what we have while we have it. Death will come for all of us eventually. But life is here now, in this moment, with you beside me and our children sleeping safely in our burrow. This is what matters. This is what's real." Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the crickets sing their evening song. The rabbit felt something he hadn't experienced in years, complete contentment, not because the future was certain, but because the present was enough. The seasons changed as they always do. Summer gave way to autumn, and the meadow transformed into a tapestry of reds, oranges, and golds. The rabbit helped his family prepare for winter, gathering food with enthusiasm rather than dread. He taught Emily and James how to find the best hiding spots for their stores, how to read the signs of changing weather in the behavior of other animals, and most importantly, how to find joy in the simple work of preparation. When the first snow fell, blanketing the meadow in pristine white, the rabbit stood at the entrance of his burrow and marveled at the beauty. He remembered how just months ago he would have seen the snow as another reminder of passing time, another season bringing him closer to his end. Now he saw it as a miracle, water transformed into delicate crystals, each one unique and temporary, yet together creating something magnificent. Winter nights were long, and the family spent them huddled together in their cozy burrow. The rabbit told stories to Emily and James, tales he had heard from the eagle, the fox, and the hummingbird, but also stories he created himself, adventures about brave rabbits who learned to live fully, about the magic found in ordinary moments, about the courage it takes to love deeply, knowing that all things must end. The children listened with wide eyes, and though they were too young to fully grasp the depth of their father's words, they absorbed the love and presence behind them. They would remember these nights forever, not because anything extraordinary happened, but because their father was truly there with them, his attention undivided, his heart fully present. Spring arrived with an explosion of new life. Flowers pushed through the thawing ground, birds returned from their winter journeys, and the meadow buzzed with activity and renewal. The rabbit watched as Emily and James, now a year older, played with other young rabbits, racing through the grass and learning the ways of the world. He felt a twinge of emotion knowing they were growing up, that these precious years of childhood would pass quickly. But instead of letting that knowledge paralyze him with fear, he let it motivate him to cherish each moment even more deeply. One morning, while gathering fresh clover for breakfast, the rabbit encountered the eagle perched on a high branch overlooking the meadow. She looked down at him with her penetrating gaze and called out, "Young friend, I see the change in you. You walk differently now, lighter, freer. Tell me, has the lesson taken root?" The rabbit looked up at her and smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "It has, wise one. I still think about death sometimes. I don't think that will ever completely go away. But now when I think of it, I also think of how blessed I am to be alive right now. The fear hasn't disappeared entirely, but it no longer rules me. I've learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to live fully despite the fear." The eagle nodded slowly, her silver-tipped feathers catching the morning light. "You have learned well. Many creatures live their entire lives never understanding what you now know. They reach their final days with regrets, wishing they had loved more, laughed more, lived more. But you have chosen differently. You have chosen life while you still have it to choose. That is true wisdom." The rabbit felt warmth spread through his chest at her words. He thanked her and continued on his way, but her affirmation stayed with him, a confirmation that the path he had chosen was right. As the years passed, and they did pass, as years always do, the rabbit continued to live with intention and presence. He and Sarah welcomed more children, watched Emily and James grow into young adults and start families of their own, and became pillars of their meadow community. The rabbit, now older with silver streaks in his fur, was sought out by younger animals who struggled with fears and anxieties. He would listen patiently to their concerns and share the wisdom that had been given to him, that life's brevity isn't a curse but a call to mindfulness, that death's inevitability shouldn't paralyze us but inspire us to make our moments matter. One evening, now quite elderly, the rabbit sat once again on the same rock where he had first encountered the angel of death years before. His body was weaker now, his movements slower, but his heart was at peace. He looked up at the familiar stars and whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for teaching me while I still had time to learn. Thank you for the angel who came not to take my life, but to give it back to me. Thank you for the wise friends who showed me the way. Thank you for Sarah, for our children, for every sunrise and sunset, for every moment of joy and even for every moment of sorrow, because all of it was real, all of it mattered, all of it was mine to experience." The wind blew gently through the meadow, carrying with it the scent of wildflowers and the distant sound of young rabbits playing. The old rabbit smiled, understanding now what he couldn't have understood in his youth, that this moment, right here, right now, was enough. It had always been enough. Life wasn't a problem to be solved or a threat to be feared. It was a gift to be opened, one day at a time, one breath at a time, one heartbeat at a time. And so the small rabbit learned what many forget, that the true secret of life isn't in counting the days, but in making each day count. He discovered that living in fear of tomorrow is indeed dying while still breathing, but living fully in today, that is how we become truly alive. I'm so grateful you stayed with us through this entire story. If it touched something in your heart, I'd love to hear about it. Drop a comment sharing what this message means to you, or tell us about a moment when you chose to live fully despite your fears. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to join our community. Together, we're learning that life's most profound lessons often come wrapped in the simplest stories. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for choosing to embrace your own journey with courage and gratitude.